Welcome back to Talk with Brett. This is Brett with my co-host, the great Doug Friedman.
Oh, how sweet.
We're going to have an amazing show today, as you know.
Looking forward to it. I know your guest very well.
Okay, I'm so honored to introduce my next guest, Sandra Scheller. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's always so nice to see you. Such great energy and passion.
It's good to see you. It's very good to see you.
So let's start with telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
Who is Sandra Scheller?
Boy, that's a good one. You know, I just did a TED Talk, and so I was a professional mime, is who I was, and lived in San Diego. I received my pilot's license from a lot of hard work. In 1999, I met somebody who owned a flying trapeze act. Didn't think much about it. Next thing you know, I've been working with them since 1999 for Vilga Love Code. It's called the Flying Cranes.
And you're still involved?
And I'm still involved. I'm the company manager, and I just make sure that anything that Vil needs, I get done. I worked at Cirque for 9 years for a show called Zumanity, and here I am today, trying to give as much as I can to my community with Holocaust awareness.
It's remarkable, really, that there still are so many Holocaust survivors with us, and you realize the ones that did survive were fairly young adults at the time. They're up there in their 90s now.
Mm-hmm.
But
We just lost one of the oldest Holocaust survivors, 101, who died, and they say he was the oldest Holocaust survivor in Auschwitz, who survived Auschwitz.
Wow.
Ruthie died at the age of 90, and it was a shock. I mean, her birthday's coming up in 3 days, 4 days.
Really?
Yeah, July 6th.
Wow.
So it'll be my first birthday without. This October, Ruthie and I were doing a school talk in beautiful downtown Chula Vista, which is where we did our talks. And we were a South Bay addict, let me put it that way.
Right.
And we're doing one of our talks, and I got this thing on Facebook, a guy from Germany, Ingo Grossman, and he was like, I hear that you're speaking about somebody by the name of Gertrude Heise. Well, that was the woman who tried to kill my grandmother with a gun. She was given permission as an SS officer, and she had pointed a gun at my grandmother, and it just turned out that she just didn't cock that gun and shoot it. And yet she had put 3,000 children in Auschwitz. She was known for that. And anyway, he said, I heard that you mentioned that in your school talk. I'm like, I'm in Chula Vista, and you are in Germany. How did you find out about me? He said, on your Facebook page, you mentioned something on my Try to Remember, Never Forget page. I have a like page, Try to Remember, Never Forget. I'm like, oh my God. He said, can you tell me what happened? I said, no, I won't, but I'll take my video camera and I'll videotape my mom. So there was my mom giving testimony that potentially could be used in Berlin if they do her trial. Turns out Gertrude has Alzheimer's, so she doesn't remember what she did. And her daughter claims that she doesn't know what her mother did. So Ingo asked, Ruthie, can you forgive? And my mother said, look at my life now. I'm 90 years old. I don't feel that I'm bitter. I love to give back. I just got my honorary degree. I was Mother of the Year. I was Woman of Valor. I've got great grandkids. Great kids. Sorry, Sam and Max. Only kids, grandchildren. I wake up. I'm with Sandy. I've got a sister, and we do school talks. Her room looked like a funeral parlor with all the roses and flowers that she got. She looked like a candy shop with all the baby Ruth that people gave her. And she said, forgive. She said, just don't even have to say anything. And she let it go, and that's what made her so sweet and wonderful. And I decided, I want to be like that.
it is just devastating, the stories. And when you see a Holocaust story on TV or a movie of the week or something, you have to realize, you have to multiply that horrible story times millions to realize how big a tragedy it really was.
So let's talk about Try to Remember and Never Forget.
Okay.
Remember more about your mom, about Ruth. So when did you find out that your mother was in the Holocaust?
Interesting story. I found out my mom was in the Holocaust when I was sleeping at night, and I heard a scream in the middle of the night.
How old were you?
I was about 6 or 7 years old.
Okay.
And I ran into the room, and my father said, she just had a nightmare, just go out, I'll talk to you about it in the morning. And in the morning, my father said that my mom was in the Holocaust. I'm like, Holocaust?
Right.
What the heck is a Holocaust? And so he explained things to me, and I tried to talk to my mom, and little by little I just noticed the way that she did things. Like if we would eat a meal, you'd never waste bread. You would never waste anything. You would either take it home or do something with it or recycle it. And I remember that I tried to scratch this tattoo off of my grandfather's arm. And I remember always trying to scratch it, and he would always make these funny sounds as I was doing that. I didn't realize that was the tattoo that was given to him in Auschwitz. So my grandfather was now known as a number instead of a person. So being in the United States, the fact that you're known as a person is a huge thing. About 6 years ago, my mother got very, very sick. I thought she was going to pass. And I asked her a very simple question, really simple question. How far back can you remember? So she told me what life was like at the age of 3. She was from a pretty wealthy family. And then on my grandmother's birthday, March 14th, 1939, boom. Everything went crazy. The Nazis came in, took the family car, invaded the family home. Within those years, they had already marked her where she was going to wear a star, and then she was in the first transport, in a K transport, K3.
Where did she live?
She lived in Brno. She was in Marowski-Schönberg, and then she went to Brno, and then from Brno she was sent to Theresienstadt, which would have been a few hours trip, ended up being a 2-week trip of just absolute hell with my grandmother and my grandfather.
So what was the reason for deciding to write this book?
Because I wanted to make sure I had all the facts, something I could give my kids, something I could give my family. I didn't realize that so many people wanted to know the story. I didn't realize so many people wanted to know what was going on. And when I opened up a suitcase, I realized that my mother had the dress that my grandmother wore in Auschwitz. And it had a symbol of the X and the line going down. And that's the cover of the book, is that symbol. And I took that symbol and, you know, I treat it as though it says never forget, that it says never forget. And a lot of people have been so marvelous and wonderful helping me with that symbol. And
We'll be placing that photo and a picture of the book on the website also.
Okay, perfect, yeah. It's
Sandra, when your mom was in Theresienstadt, had they gotten the death camps going by then, or did they know about those, or did that come later?
You know, if my mom was here right now, Doug, besides her giving you a hug, she would say, well, Doug, I didn't know about Kristallnacht because we didn't have, what do you call it? We didn't have the internet. We didn't know what was going on. And then you just lived day to day. So one day she's in Theresienstadt, not knowing what's going on in Auschwitz. And when you got to, she was in Theresienstadt for 3.5 years, then she went to Auschwitz, and then she went to Oderon. So she went from a concentration to an extermination, and then she went to a work camp. And she was very lucky. Hard to say the word Holocaust and lucky at the same time, but she was with my grandmother the whole time, and my grandmother was the smartest whippersnapper I knew. She knew how to survive. She would do things like go to the girls and take wrappers and peel them off and soak them, and then take that color and put it on their face so that they had a little more rouge. My grandmother knew how to keep them going, and constantly saying, you know, we cannot forget this.
The point of the rouge being so that they looked healthier and wouldn't be exterminated.
That's correct, healthy and older. My mother faced Dr. Mengele 6 times. If you were to ask my mom right now what was the worst thing that ever happened to her in the camp, it probably was the humiliation of Dr. Mengele, the fact that you're shaved. You think you're shaved by Nazis or you're shaved by Jewish men? You're shaved by Jewish men. The Nazis are in the back laughing, standing on this platform, and then all of a sudden you face Dr. Mengele. Nice looking man, my mother would say. Nice looking man. And he just pointed to the right or the left. To the right, you ended up going one place. To the left, you went another. You never know what day he was going to change his movements. And my mother went through him 6 times in total nudity.
Wow, I thought that was only when they arrived. I didn't realize.
No, every single day.
No
Every
kidding.
single day. So see, that's why I wrote the book, so that, and I'm going to give you a copy, so that you know exactly what happened from survivor to survivor. That's why everybody's book is so unique. It's so different, and they use it as a teaching tool in the schools. And Yeah.
It's like I said, Brett, you have to multiply these stories times millions to get the real impact of how big it was.
Amazing.
Did your mother feel good going on television and talking about it? Was it therapeutic at all? Did she feel like she was doing something important?
You know, the more she talked, she didn't have nightmares, and she felt that she had a purpose as she got older. You know, my mom was in a wheelchair, and I almost felt like that wheelchair was holding her back, not letting her be who she needed to be. And yet the fact that people were still giving her standing ovations and, how do you say, honorary doctorates, and the fact that she was a speaker at Comic-Con last year, and we're doing it again this year. And it just did a 180. Like, she didn't think in terms like that, but she knew that she didn't have nightmares the more she spoke about it.
It's like a therapy.
Yeah.
So she was in 3 camps.
3 camps.
Which was the worst?
It's a good question. You've got Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Oderon. And when I asked my mom, and this is also in the film that we made a 25-minute documentary that is going to hopefully be shown in all the schools here in the Chula Vista area. So we have the book and we have the film. Yeah, the worst camp. Well, I think the worst was liberation, as my mother would say, because when you're in a camp, at least you had a bed. There was something called a toilet, and there was something like, even though it was water and powder and disgusting food, it was there. You didn't think. But liberation, doors are open. How do you survive? How do you start? How do you begin? You go home and your home is bombed. Everything is bombed. Everything is gone. Everything is taken. Out of 11,000 people that left my mother's village, 200 people came back. My mother, grandmother, and grandfather were the only surviving family
Of that
that
village?
made it without losing a brother or losing somebody. So that was a miracle within itself.
So let's talk about this South Bay Holocaust awareness thing that you're doing. Let's talk a little bit about that, what your goal is.
My goal is, back in the heyday, back in the 60s, it was a known fact that Jewish people just weren't allowed to do things like buy property in La Jolla or play golf at the San Diego Country Club.
How many years ago?
About in the 60s.
Crazy. It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
not that long
It was a
ago.
little difficult. It was a little difficult. I'm not going to say impossible, but it was difficult. And so in Chula Vista, we had a synagogue. We had one temple, and there were a group of people who belonged to it. And it's just, everybody just kind of went their separate ways and did their separate things. So I decided to do a little research and find out who the Holocaust survivors now in the South Bay are. And I have found some amazing, amazing people. And so I went to where I'm on the board of directors for the South Bay Historical Society. And we're doing an exhibit called Project Ruth, RUTH, and it stands for Remember Us, the Holocaust. And it's about all these different Holocaust survivors who came from Europe and ended up either going into Mexico and now coming and live in Chula Vista.
So what lesson did you learn from your mom?
Be kind, be nice,
Forgive?
forgive, don't forget, but forgive, just forgive, let it go.
How can people get the book? Do you have
My
a
book,
website?
I sure do. Try to remember neverforget.com. If you go to my Facebook page, Try to Remember Never Forget on Facebook. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Nobles. And very easy to get a hold of, so that if you want a copy of it, we can always meet if you want me to sign it. I have a whole bunch of signed copies. At the Chula Vista Library, you can get signed copies. They're there, and you can purchase them there. And it's part of the South Bay Historical Society.
So you're going to try to build this center in the South Bay.
My goal is to be there this January 12th, which is what I'm hoping the opening is going to be, and it'll be featuring the different survivors that are in the South Bay. And then I plan on going with Eva Kors to the 75th liberation of Auschwitz in January, in the cold and the snow, with a very warm heart by the name of Eva Kors, who's got the Holocaust Museum in Indiana that I just saw.
It's going to be an amazing experience.
I'm hoping that the exhibit is not just an exhibit, but that I'll be able to show the film a little more often so people can go to the Chula Vista Library and see how often we're doing it. I'd like to feature different Holocaust survivors to speak every month and to really make it an experience. I want to be able to create books where I knew that Anne Frank wrote, and obviously I'm a writer, and what I want to do is to have pages that people can even write about their life and to hang on to this and maybe create an experience from what happened over the years' time at the Chula Vista Library.
Sandra, I really enjoyed talking to you. I know Doug enjoyed himself also, I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was a perfect match. Your stories touched our hearts,
Thank you.
and I'm sure thousands of kids you've brought this awareness to also has made an impact in their lives, because as you told me stories, and we're going to have to do another show, I think.
Well, if anybody's going to Comic-Con, we've got art during the Holocaust. That'll be on that Thursday, 1:30, room 4, during Comic-Con, and it'll be really nice to see you. Do me a favor, if you do come there, give me a high five, just so that I know you heard the radio show.
Did you hear what she said, everybody?
Okay.
Thank you for being on my show, dear.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.